Land. Very important. When I speak with people from the diaspora, there are a lot of things I'm speaking about in terms of land and identity. And with identity, I'm not talking about like heritage where you're from. That's another topic. But I'm speaking about your passport, for instance. You know, if you could apply for dual citizenship, you should apply for dual citizenship. It's very important. So I would say passport and land, very important. And why should you get passports and land? Let's start with a passport. If you personally never experienced racism or you never experienced any issues or problems in terms of actually anything in your country you're living in right now, then I could understand. You would say like, hey, why should I move from Europe? From America? Why should I go to Africa? You know, I don't have any relation to Africa. I don't have any, feeling with Africa right now. That's one. And I've had some people that actually said that to me. My response is very easily, it's not about you. It's not just about you. Because you might not have experienced anything in terms of racism and all of that. And it's not only about racism, don't get me wrong. But it's also about choices. So the moment you decide not to get your passport, not to go to Africa, and you get children, so your next generation, and they are going through racism, or they want to live somewhere else than Europe, they want to live out of Europe, and they come to, let's say Ghana, for instance, in my situation, and they have to go through the visa process, they have to get things done to be here, to live here, all that. Because if you have a passport, they can just fly in, they can start a business, they can choose to get some land, they can choose to get property, they can choose to build a life here. Even though if you had chosen to just stay in Europe, because you made that decision to start a process for the passport opening, then they can just come and just do their stuff over here. And when they got a passport, they now can do the same thing with their children. The moment you choose not to get a passport, and it gets difficult for them to get a passport, how are their children gonna get their passport then? It's all about choice, and it's very simple. So personally, my daughter has all passports. She's Nigerian, she's Ghanaian, she's Dutch. So she has all passports. So it's the right to the passport. So when she grows up, she can choose whether to live in Ghana, in Nigeria, or in the Netherlands, or in Europe. Because basically, your Dutch passport, you can basically travel anywhere. So that's something about passports. It's very important to make sure if you don't want to live in Africa, and let your choice be to your children, that they can decide whether to live or travel or do business anywhere in Africa. Second thing, land. When I speak with the people, actually, when I started buying my first land in Africa, and I spoke to some friends of mine about getting some plots in Africa, they all said, okay, yeah, I got some plots. I'm in Africa. My granddad had some plots, my uncle had some plots. I was like, yeah, but that doesn't count. Your uncle or your auntie or your grandma or your cat or your dog, whoever has a plot, that doesn't matter. That actually only says that they were smart enough to get some land, and you are just like chilling on that land. You're just inheriting the land when they pass away. That's the fact, right? You're just getting the land when they pass away. It doesn't make sense to me, honestly. So I think it's very important that you should get some land personally, because that's something, they're not going to make more land. This is a fact. The moment you've got some land, that's your ownership. That's actually your true identity. You can now choose whether you're going to build on it, whether you're going to resell it long-term. Land most of the time is going up in value. There are a lot of abroad investors, who come with proposals to build on your land, even though it's a very good location. I think right now is the moment, as an African, to get land in Africa. Personally, I live in Ghana right now, so for me it's quite easy. I got a lot of plots here in Africa right now, and I'll actually inspire and try to encourage my people around to get the same plots of land, to get the same land in Africa as well, because once you have that as well, it's good that you have the ability to choose, not only for yourself, but also for your children, and if they have the passport, to live and build something on top of the land, or it's a future piggy bank. That's why you call it, right? The piggy bank. So I think it's very important to see those things as an insurance for the future, for your next generation. I think we should speak more about this, and I think that a lot of people don't really speak about it, because they think like, you know what, that's something from the past. My granddad, my grandfather, my uncle, they have some land and they'll just give it to me when they pass away. Own it. Walk the talk. Get your land and get it on your own name. Not on someone else's title, your own name. I'm the type of person, I'm not interested in those stories. I'm interested in the stories for people who actually got the land without problems. So I'll ask those people, what have you done to get the land you're sitting on right now? And I want to learn from their experiences. Because obviously, people are always going to focus on the negative, which I actually did. And of course, you have to do your due diligence. Don't get me wrong. You have to check, okay, is this guy really legit and all that? But I feel right now, a lot of people are not taking the step to get some land based on the fact because they heard a lot of stories. They've never ever experienced something in their life themselves, but they heard something from an uncle, and his uncle's granddad, and the granddad, his neighbor, and a neighbor cat had bad experience with getting land somewhere in Africa. And that's the reason why they're not getting land in Africa. Come on, man. Doesn't make sense to me. But in that way, why are the Chinese people or Lebanese people or other investors from several other countries investing in land then? Why are they not talking about those land issues? But we Africa, when I speak to people, we always talk about problems rather than solutions. I think we should start talking about the opportunities rather than only the problems. Well, it's more expensive to not get land than to get land. It's very easy. Why? You're not just getting land based on your personal finance in that particular moment. When you buy land, it's not just to make money off. It's not an investment you can just make money so you can buy Louis Vuitton sneakers the next day. No. You're buying land for your next generation. When I talk about generational wealth, I'm talking about properties, assets, land. That's when I personally talk about generational wealth. I'm not talking about I'm just getting some cryptocurrencies. That's, in my opinion, not generational wealth. You can make money out of it, definitely. It's a good investment. I think so. When I talk about generational wealth, I talk about assets. And in this my assets, I think that land is one of the most important thing you can own in Africa as an African or African descendant. Expensive? That's very relative. That's very relative. Because I know people who buy stuff, who invest in things that are depreciating in value. Land hardly depreciates. It's very easy. So there are a lot of, things around work, but then again, we had a conversation already about like, if you don't have money, OPM, other people's money, you have a lot of options. Just be creative. Get the right people around you who can tell how you can acquire land, how you can get into business to get the things you want to have and want to achieve.